And joining me now on India First is Lieutenant General KJS Dhillon, former Kashmir Corps Commander, also former Director General of India's Defence Intelligence Agency. Air Marshal Sanjeev Kapoor is former Director General of Flight Safety and Inspections. Ambassador Rajiv Dogra is former Consul General in Karachi and our former Ambassador to Italy. And from the United States, joining me is Michael Rubin, Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute and former official of the Pentagon. General Dhillon, if I may, is there merit in the CDS saying it was an innings defeat for Pakistan and you don't ask the winning team how many wickets they lost? Was it an innings defeat for Pakistan?
Thank you, Gaurav, and good evening to the fellow panelists and your viewers. See, in a war, you go back to the history of First World War, Second World War, or the recent skirmishes or the conflicts which many countries have faced, including the United States of America. The overall result is what counts. It is like a boxing match. You don't count how many punches you gave and how many punches the other person gave, and you start claiming victory. It is the result by the referee which says, okay, finally so-and-so is the winner, because he played better and he gave more punches. Similarly, like General Chauhan, our Chief of Defence Staff, has said, it is not important how many losses. When you go into a war, losses will happen. Nobody can say that I am going into a war, full-fledged war, and I will not take any losses. No, that's not the way the wars are fought. Losses will happen, but in the end, who gives the final blow? Who brings down the complete air force and air defense of a nuclear country within 8 hours or within 3 days and 23 minutes of air warfare is a lesson in the history to learn from. And within 48 hours, they had wanted India to come to the knees. Within 8 hours, they were ringing up for a cessation of hostilities. Now, that is a lesson. We hit the targets with precision, no collateral damage to civilian or military installation. That is the winning. We hit their terror bases, and thereafter we hit their air bases with their complete air force and air defense to the ground. Now, that is the winning. Okay. We made sure they pick up the phone and call up the DGMO to ask for cessation of hostilities. Now that is the winning. You don't count few pennies here and there in wars. It is the ultimate defeat, which is absolutely clear, even in the dossier which they submitted.
Air Marshal Kapoor, there are losses in combat, but you see, outcome is what CDS says. Sure, there are losses in combat, but then why shy away from mentioning own losses in combat? Is there a reason for it, sir?
In any conflict, Gaurav, I have been telling it in all the forums, has any time the Chinese accepted how many people have they lost in Galwan? Has any time the Americans said that how many aircrafts did they lose in Gulf War? Has Americans at any way said what assets did they lose in Afghanistan? As I was reading, they have lost 15 MQ-9s drones, each costing $70 million to $130 million, 15 of them in conflict around Yemen. Have they mentioned anywhere? Has Pakistani state apparatus said on any forum that they have lost so many aircrafts? Nobody says in any conflict. Nobody says, and I don't know why the narrative has been pitched to ask Indian Air Force or the armed forces to say what losses, what are you achieving by getting a figure? What I cannot understand. And like General Dhillon just said, it's a boxing match. In the end, both sides are professional armed forces. And another point to take on to what you just said, Gaurav, it is the conflicts of America and Israel are against a situation which is called air superiority. They have not even a favorable air situation. Within no time, they get a favorable air situation and air superiority, and they can launch operations. Here we went in totally contested airspace, totally well-defended airspace, and the kind of effort required to penetrate and hit with precision those targets is something which the country should be proud of. That's my take.
And that too a nuclear weapon state. Neither America nor Israel, no country in the world has taken another nuclear weapon state head on. It's only India that's done so, whether it's vis-a-vis China in Galwan or Pakistan in Operation Sindoor. And Trump's come out on top. Ambassador Dogra, did we win the war on ground, but Pakistan won that war of falsehood and setting the narrative?
Well, how does it matter? Even if Pakistan is able to convince, let's say, its own country and then the entire world that it has won the war, is it going to make any difference to us? Is it going to make any difference to the morale of our services? I don't think so. Pakistan is a past master in saying that we are the masters of the world. But that does not change the picture on the ground that they go around with a begging bowl. In fact, only yesterday, the Prime Minister said, I'm tired of begging countries for money. They now shun us away. So the reality is that Pakistan's bluff has been called. Countries know. In fact, there was an article just yesterday that I was reading from one of the respected American publications, Research Institute, RUSI, where they've given a blow-by-blow account of the first day's war, and they've given a
Yes.
factual account. And in fact, I've gone on record to say it'll be good if you give a similar account for the last day of the war, because I want to remind your viewers of the in-between time. You know, when our screens, our television screens, were full of anxiety about the various drones that were coming in into India over Jammu, Pathankot, even Amritsar. And then slowly it emerged that each one of them had been shot down. Some
Yes.
shells and some drones may have fallen and done some damage, but the overall effect was that we came through that ordeal. That was supposed to be the Pakistan's big chance. And then what followed, as General Dillon and the Air Marshal have very correctly and very wisely pointed out, is that we took on a formidable uh, enemy, in this case Pakistan, and we were able to, despite their air defenses, we were able to get through and achieve our targets. The
Yes.
world, the world that matters would know that India came through this in flying colors, as an Air Force officer
You
would
know,
say.
my only submission is, and I'll come back to you on that point. You see, if the Pakistanis realize that they've lost the war, then they would be dissuaded from attempting it again. But in their minds, if they think that they've won the war, they will think, let's do it again. So it must be drilled into their heads that they've lost every war to India. Unfortunately, while we win the war on ground, we never drive home the point, that Prithviraj Chauhan syndrome of letting the enemy go, letting Muhammad Ghori go. You let Muhammad Ghori go once, he will come back and kill you the next time, like he did with Prithviraj Chauhan in the Battle of Tarai, the second battle. So that's why when the enemy is down, just knock him out and don't let him breathe again. But I want to bring in Michael Rubin for a moment from the United States of America for his perspective. The battle on ground, Michael Rubin, was won by India. But that battleground has now shifted to the United States. So you have the Indian delegation there, you have the Pakistani delegation there, battleground Washington, D.C. But what games is the United States playing so far? Not being very fair if you were to look at it from the Indian perspective.
You know, the United States position is going to simply be to ask for quiet, to ask for calm. And we're going to approach this with moral equivalence. I say this as an analyst rather than an advocate. But what we've seen most recently is that the Israelis and the Ukrainians, in their fight, respectively, against the Lebanese or against, in the case of Ukraine against Russia, have ignored the United States and done what's necessary to win their war. And so India can listen to the United States, but ultimately it shouldn't rely on the United States diplomacy to protect Indian security.
What a lovely point you make there, Sir. General Dillon, listen to the United States, but do what you have to do. Hear them out, but take your own decisions. The Israelis do that. The Ukrainians are doing that. And Michael Rubin is just back from Ukraine. General Dillon, you agree? The Pakistani delegation it's going to the United States with a list of places bombed that include Baluchistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, which hasn't been mentioned by own DG Air Ops in his briefing. Did we hit more and speak less in your appreciation, Jal Dhillon?
Gaurav, first let me, give a, you can say, rejoinder to the point which Mr. Michael has made. See, in the today's world, if you expect someone else to come and fight a war, sorry, you are mistaken.
True.
We have to fight our own wars. And as he very rightly said, Hindi में कहावत है, सुनो सबकी करो मन की. So we are in that position as the fourth largest economy, as the biggest democracy in the world, and 1/6 of the population of the world, and the might of the military of Indian Defence Forces. So we have to do whatever suits our interests the best. Now, coming to your point, Pakistan going with a list and including targets which our operational directorates have not given out. See, Air Marshal Kapoor has said it very rightly. We carry out analysis of the post-strike damage assessment. We carry out the analysis of our own losses, enemy's damages, and we give out the picture when we are absolutely clear and the damages to the enemy have been ascertained from multiple sources. We are not the ones who will go into the parliament and flash a newspaper which has been doctored and say Pakistani Air Force was the king of the skies. We are not the ones who will go into the House of the National Assembly and say so many losses and where is the proof? Proof is on social media. We are not the ones who will make claims without a base. We are a mature nation, we are a mature democracy, we are a mature nuclear power. When we will make a claim, it will be irrefutable. And that is how our defense forces have been. Wait for some time. After they have authenticated the damages to Pakistan, they will come out. As Mr. Manjeet Negi was just giving out few damages, you never know. They may well be correct, or they may well be more than this. Wait, and
Well,
let's
our
wait for the
information
official
is more
version.
than that. Yep. And especially about the casualties, because in the Kargil war, Marshal Kapoor, Pakistan, we had to bury Pakistani bodies on the Kargil heights. This time, apparently, Pakistan's burying its own bodies at those air bases, not even taking them out and sending them home to their families. At least that is what sources are telling us. But Pakistan claims to have downed X number of Rafales or Mirages or Sukhois, or so they claim. Why are we permitting Pakistanis and the Chinese and a section of the Pakistani origin journalists in the West to get away with half-truths and absolute lies in some instances? If Pakistani planes have been downed, like one of their air marshals, retired air marshals, said about that AWACS or the Airborne Early Warning Command and Control System at the Bolari Air Base, why are we not saying it officially on record? Of course, Manjeet Negi has done that brilliant investigation and he's got that story just now, just moments before. But tell me, why aren't we saying this officially?
The present state, Gaurav, is called fog of war. The facts and figures will be coming out in due course, and I'm sure the services and the government will put out the final thing as and when. As of now, it is pause in Operation Sindoor. The forces are still deployed. There is a readiness all across, and it doesn't augur well at this stage to start, bean counting what has happened and what has not happened. Now, coming to the question which you mentioned in the passing, is the double standards. See, the Western origin equipment which was used by the Pakistani, because Turkey is also a NATO country, they would never want to highlight to the world that the Russian and Indian origin or Indian modified or indigenous equipment would take down their aircrafts. After Abhinandan shot down an F-16, the videos and the ground people saw two parachutes coming out. One was Abhinandan and one was their pilot. The next day, the Indians showed the AMRAAM piece in front of South Block. I'm talking 2019.
Yes,
and the Americans at that said, we will investigate how the Pakistanis fired the AMRAAM missile, which they were not supposed to fire. The F-16, they said, we will, find out. But why would America accept that their F-16 was shot? Why would they accept that their weapons did? Why will they accept that their Lockheed Martin radars were taken off on the first day? Why would they
let them not accept? We have facts. Let us put it out in public domain. We don't owe it to Lockheed Martin. We don't owe it to Americans. If we've downed an F-16, let's say danke ki chot par kehte hain na F-16 giraya.
See, there would be some reasons. See, I cannot be in a position at this stage to comment what is the reasoning, why it is not done. Yes, of course, you have a merit in saying the narrative has to be coming up. And I think so your responsible media like yours have a larger role to play now. The lesson for the media after this campaign is that in the beginning we saw some Karachi has been taken off, this thing has been taken off, this thing has gone, the fire in so city, which is all fake. So
No,
it's
but Karachi
unnecessary.
was targeted. Malir cantonment is in Karachi. Government officially
I know that.
admitted that Karachi was targeted. So,
No,
because
this
I spoke of Karachi being targeted, that's a fact, sir. Malir cantonment radar and that Lockheed Martin radar was taken out, sir.
I know that this came later. I'm talking when the hostilities had just begun on 7th. So there is some sort of a requirement of a national governing body which should take out the narrative, the government version. That is my take. The independent media from their sources gather, and each one has its own way of putting across things. The debrief or the thing which we should learn out of this 4-day conflict is to have a body, the central body, which gets the true picture to the nation or to the world. So this is
And it
my
has
take.
to be done real time.
Yes,
Absolutely. It has to be
yes,
done real time. It can't
yes.
happen 4 days later and 40 days later. But Ambassador Dogra, like CDS General Anil Chauhan mentioned that an appropriate time based on ELINT and SIGINT, electronic intelligence and signal intelligence and radar data appreciation, they may share an assessment. He said that at the university today. But that would just end up being a footnote in history. Why are we not on the ball on facts? When we are on the ball when it comes to military operations, why do we let Pakistan build that narrative? And again, I come back to that point. If they know they've lost, they may not try it next time. They think they've won every war. They think they won 71 when they were split into two. They think they won Kargil. They think they're sitting on Siachen when they're not. We are on the Saltoro ridgeline. So they think wrong and we don't correct them.
Well, Gaurav, there are 3 points you made in your various interventions or various anchors privileges, and I would like to touch on each one of them. The first is this issue of narrative. I remember 16th of December 1971, Dawn, the Pakistani premier newspaper, had banner headlines saying victory on all fronts. But that did not change the situation. Bangladesh was created on that very day. General Niazi was busy signing the surrender documents in Dhaka. So I think, as has rightly been said by the Air Marshal, that we are a mature nation. We should let facts speak for itself. Otherwise, we'll become one with Pakistan. What we should do is really to drill home to the Pakistani public the fact that, like in Kargil, and even worse than Kargil, they have themselves decided to put a ton of bricks or mud or whatever on their dead bodies so that the nation forgets about them. I think that is demoralizing even for the serving soldiers and officers of the Pakistani army. That is the kind of thing that must be highlighted again and again and again. The other thing is the Prithviraj Chauhan syndrome, which you had mentioned. I don't know whether your American guest is familiar with it, but briefly to say that there was an Indian king a couple of 100 years back who won many times over a invader from Afghanistan. And each time he would pardon that invader. Finally, on the 17th time or so the legend goes, that Afghan invader was able to win in the battle against Prithviraj Chauhan, the Indian king. And what he did was he dragged the king all the way from his capital in India to Kabul, tied on the tail of a horse. And he was kept
Blinded.
hungry, thirsty, he was blinded, and then he was buried there. So, yes, we should be aware that there is a limit to our generosity, there's a limit to our large-heartedness, but this time it is different. I think what we have done with the Indus Waters Treaty is the one which has all the answers that Gaurav, you have asked. These Indus Water Treaty, if we persist with what we have decided to do, I think is the answer to every question that you may have on this court.
I will let that be the last word on this part of the show. Michael Rubin will be happy to get you back. You've just come back from Ukraine. We'll have you back on the show when we do one on Ukraine very soon. But the folklore in India, and that's also very inspiring, is a poem by Chandra Bardai, the poet friend of Prithviraj Chauhan. Now, the folklore goes that he actually killed Muhammad Ghori in the end, even though blinded. There's a line that goes like Char Abbas 24 gaz angul asht pramad ta upar sultan hai mat chuke Chauhan. And that should be India's attitude at all times. Do not spare your enemy when the enemy is down, decimate.